I'm Alex Michaelson. This week, the issue is there's something about Bob Woodward and tapes.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes. President Trump, in his own words, describing his controversial coronavirus strategy in Bob Woodward's new book, Rage. We break it down with our panel, former White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci, LA Times political writer Seema Mehta, and Joel Pollak from Breitbart News. Plus, Chasten Buttigieg is with us, talking about being married to Pete, his emotional coming out story, and what's at stake in this election for the LGBTQ community. Then,
Trump pretended the coronavirus wouldn't come to our shores.
These California brothers dominating the internet with an anti-Trump political action committee they started as a hobby during quarantine. We'll meet the trio behind the Meidas Touch, as the issue is starts right now.
Broadcasting across California, California's only statewide political show. You're watching The Issue Is.
And welcome to The Issue Is. I'm Alex Michaelson. This week, famed journalist Bob Woodward released audio of his interviews with President Trump back in February, where he talked about intentionally playing down the threat from coronavirus.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. This is deadly stuff. I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
Despite admitting that threat, the president still chose to hold numerous indoor rallies without mask requirements, including this one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He wouldn't publicly be seen in a mask for months. The excerpt we just played is some of the 18 interviews the president gave to Bob Woodward on the record for his new book, Rage. Let's talk about it with our all-star panel joining us this week, all of whom have been so generous over the years with our show. Anthony Scaramucci is back. He's the former White House Communications Director. He is the founder of Skybridge Capital, and he has an impressive book collection. Seema Mehta is a political writer for the Los Angeles Times, a cat mom, and a road warrior from many presidential elections. Joel Pollak is a senior editor-at-large for Breitbart News, the host of Breitbart News Sunday nights on Sirius XM Radio, and he's the author of Red November. Will the country vote red for Trump or red for socialism? This panel has different views on the answer to Joel's question right there. Welcome back to The Issue Is, all of you. Mooch, let's start with you. What do you make of this Woodward book and what the president told him?
Listen, I mean, that's the president. He's trying to charm Bob Woodward. He's telling him the truth about how he feels about things. What I'm curious about, the question is not being asked of the president. So if you knew it was deadly, and you're saying you didn't want to panic the people, but you knew it was 6 times more deadly than the flu, why didn't you tell people to wear the mask? To me, I'll be interested in what Joel says, but it's going to be a very hard slog for him to get out of the position that he's in right now.
Joel, your response to that?
Well, I don't think any of that is true. First of all, at the time the president was speaking, the scientists in charge of the coronavirus response were telling people not to wear masks. The president actually told people on March 31st that they should think about covering their faces. He actually was out ahead of the experts on that one. But the idea that he was somehow trying to mislead the public isn't accurate. Joe Biden continued to hold in-person rallies right up until March 10th. So the campaigns don't really differ in how they dealt with the coronavirus.
He lied about the virus, he lied about the science, and he destroyed the American economy as a result of doing that. Had he had just handled it the way the experts had asked him to handle it, I'm not saying we would have ended up like South Korea with those low numbers, but we have one of the worst per capita death rates in the world, 190,000 people dead, 250,000 people will be dead by November. We're clicking off a 9/11 every 3 days in the country.
I think objectively, if you look at the president's response to the virus versus in that time versus what he was saying to Bob Woodward, it's not the same thing. He was saying people had sniffles. He was saying, he was making fun of people for wearing masks. Let me finish. And also, you're saying the two campaigns basically acted the same way. But I mean, if you look at the conventions, the Democrats had an all virtual convention. The president wanted to have a ton of people gather in Florida, and then eventually had more than 1,500 people on the White House lawn, shoulder to shoulder, no masks in sight. And I mean, it was just two completely different experiences. So I don't think you can objectively say that they're handling it the same way, because it's just not true.
The idea that the campaigns have handled the coronavirus differently is true now, but that's also because the Biden campaign has decided that part of their message is going to be masking and social distancing.
This wasn't the only bombshell story that came out this week. There also was this article in The Atlantic where the president is quoted, we want to put this up on the screen, as saying that Americans who die in war are losers and suckers. Seema, there's some on the right that are pushing back on this because there's a lot of, unnamed anonymous sources in this.
The broader language, a lot of it, attributed to anonymous sources, was language that was really remarkable. I question whether it moves the needle at all because in talking to voters who are Trump supporters, they don't believe it. They think it's made up. They think it's fake news. They think these anonymous sources don't exist. If you talk to people who oppose the president, this goes in line with everything they already believe about the president.
Anthony Scaramucci, you are a former Trump supporter who worked with the president, who now is no longer an anonymous source, who is very much against what he's doing. What do you make of this story? And do you think that some of these people may actually come out publicly in the months ahead?
I do think some of those people will come out publicly. I have spoken to some of those people that were sources in that story, and I believe those people. Moreover, when I was on the campaign plane with President Trump and mentioned to him that I did a troop support mission to Iraq and Afghanistan, he said very similar language to me and more or less remarked to me like, was I crazy to go over there? And why would I put myself in harm's way? And it's a ridiculous thing to do with no upside. So it's very consistent with everything that he said. And so I do suspect that those people are waiting to time the news cycle properly because the news cycle is moving so quickly, Alex. But sometime by mid-October, you'll see a deluge of ex-officials in the Trump administration speaking out about his lack of fitness to be the president of the United States.
Joel, do you care about this story? Do you believe it? And if this was a similar story about, say, President Barack Obama, would you care about that?
Well, let me answer that last question first. I have worked on stories about different candidates, and I've worked on stories about Obama, where I had one source or I had anonymous sources, and I did not publish those stories. In fact, I won't even tell you what the stories were about because I couldn't confirm them. So what The Atlantic has done goes against journalistic ethics, but now we have more than 20 people on the record who can dispute various parts of the story, including the main accusation that you put up on the screen, that they were with President Trump at the time and he never said anything like that. So I think this is basically an indefensible story. Trump supporters tend to judge him based on what he's done. A lot of the criticism is based on things he has said or that he's believed to have said.
Let's get about the bigger picture of the race, which is tightening of recent polls in Florida. We want to show you this. Check this out. 48 Biden, 47 Trump. That is right within the margin of error. And Joel, I know you would argue that some of those recent protests and the president's response, his law and order message, is a reason for some of this.
There's a sense of fear about the new challenge to public safety that's been posed by riots. And the rioting has a ripple effect because it doesn't just happen where people are smashing windows or throwing Molotov cocktails. It forces businesses to close. It also diverts police resources. And then it amplifies calls on the left to defund or abolish the police. So people are feeling unsafe.
Mooch, do you think that this is a real problem area for Joe Biden from a messaging perspective? You're the guy that focuses on the message.
I do, because the president has been very good at telling the big lie. Joe Biden does not want to defund the police. Representative Clyburn has said it 100 times. They do not want to defund the police. In the Democratic Party platform, there's actually language about increasing funding to the police. There's no Republican Party platform. It's now become the personality cult of President Trump.
Objectively, where is this race right now?
I think we don't know. It's, we're still 2 months out, and there's a lot of time. A lot of things can happen between now and early November. We have so many unanswered questions about what's going to happen with the COVID virus. Are people's kids going to get to go back to school? What are we going to see with the economy, not just the stock market, but Main Street? So there are so many unknowns.
As we would say, the worst cliche in broadcasting, stay tuned. There's a lot of unanswered questions there. Thank you all for your perspectives. That was respectful. That was fun. Lots of different views. We appreciate hearing from all of you. Up next, who can forget this moment from the Pete Buttigieg presidential campaign? This was the notorious high hopes dance done by Buttigieg supporters here in Iowa and done all over the country. When we come back, Pete's husband, Chasten, joins us to talk about his emotional new book. And who knows, he may even do the high hopes dance. Stay with us. More of the issue is after this.
I can't imagine how I could possibly do this without Chasten.
That was then presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg here on the set of The Issue Is back in January talking about his husband, Chasten. Well, now Chasten is telling his side of the story with a new book called I Have Something to Tell You, a memoir. It is already a New York Times bestseller. Chasten Buttigieg, welcome back to The Issue Is, and congratulations on the book's success.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me back.
Sure. So I got the book and I read it, and I got to give you an endorsement because I'm a political junkie. I read all sorts of political books. Most of them are really boring because they're cautious and they're too much about policy. This one is personal. You spill some tea, you get vulnerable.
Just a little.
It's a really interesting read, and I think it's an important read for a lot of people because one of the main premises for your book is that you want people to feel heard, right?
Absolutely. I think, the thing I want to tell people most of all is they're not alone. And the reason I, open up so much in the book is because so often people in politics don't share those kinds of truths or vulnerabilities. They don't take chances, and that's not the kind of book I wanted to write. I wanted to take some risks and just share who I really am. So I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, and part of it was you talking about, the process for you of discovering your own sexual identity, of coming out to your family. And you tell this emotional story of writing a letter to your parents because it was tough for you to actually say it out loud.
Yeah, I think many times the story we're so used to hearing is the parents kick the kid out, the kid runs away. But I grew up in conservative northern Michigan, and my parents didn't kick me out. It was just a simple fact. I felt like I knew once I come out, I'm going to shatter my parents' dreams, their hopes, and everything that I had learned from the society, the bubble I was growing up in, was something about me is twisted and broken, and people will not love that. So I wasn't pushed out of my home. I ran away because I was ashamed of this thing inside me that I had only grown up learning was wrong.
And your parents thought this is a choice.
For a while, I think they did because, they were living in the same bubble I was growing up in. And I have a silver lining at the end of my story. My parents called me home and we had some really hard conversations, and I'm grateful that they called me back. But we were all living in a time here in northern Michigan where it was just a fact you couldn't be gay. But thank God that they had those conversations and they called me home, and now they're our staunchest allies. Sometimes I fear they might love Peter a little bit more than me, but it feels good to have them on my side.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about the process of meeting him, because you talk about the struggle to date, and some guys were great, some guys were not. You talked about, most men were not so great. And you went on Hinge, and you saw this profile for this guy that you thought might be the mayor because he was speaking in front of a podium with his name on it. And you're like, I don't know that much about politics. I don't like politics that much, but yet you were still attracted to this guy.
Yeah, well, he had a really cute photo of him in his Navy uniform, so that caught my eye. But he did also have a photo of him with his name on a placard. He's standing at a podium, so I Googled him and found out quickly who he was. And I was a little cautious to go on a date with a politician, but it worked out. There were fireworks literally on the first date.
Yeah, and he set up a situation where there actually were fireworks. He went to a place.
It was like a Hallmark movie.
Where there would be
silly,
where there would be fireworks in the process. So you guys end up moving in together. You get married to the mayor. He's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. You're a bit of a local celebrity, but most people didn't know you. Then he runs for president and just takes off like wildfire. And you write about the fact that there was a book signing event for him in Washington, and for the first time, people are asking to take pictures with you.
Yeah, it was surreal. I had never been in a position where people just wanted to take a photo with me or just wanted to talk to me simply because of who I was. And then obviously, like you said, from there, it just the rocket took off. And it was a lot of trial by fire. It was like drinking from a fire hose.
So what is your message to that young kid right now that maybe is struggling with their identity, that is scared, that is growing up in a town like you grew up? What do you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, as I write in the book, I get pretty vulnerable in the book. I remember being a suicidal teenager sitting in my dad's basement, staring at the gun case and wondering if there was ever going to be a future for me in this country, if I would ever know love, if I would ever know community. And I wish I could go back and, put my arm around that kid's shoulder and tell him I know the bad feels terrible, but wait until you feel the good. Wait until you know what it is truly like to be loved by someone and know community. And I know it can feel dark and helpless, but they say it gets better, and I know sometimes that sounds like a load of baloney, but it truly does. And you are going to be loved one day.
At the beginning of this segment, we showed you Pete talking about what you mean to him. What does he mean to you?
Oh, man. I mean, when I met Pete, I just felt so broken. And I remember putting it all out on the table, early on, saying I've got all this student debt and medical debt, and I'm just starting grad school, figuring out what I want to do with my life. And, sort of thinking this is never going to go past the first date, because who would want to love somebody like that? But the thing I love about Pete is he made me feel so seen and so loved and comfortable being myself. I mean, he took a wrecking ball to that wall I built up between my heart and the rest of the world. And to feel truly loved like that, to feel understood and cherished for who you are, that is the greatest gift of all. So, I mean, he means the world to me.
As we go to break, some music that's inspired by your book. Yeah, so you hear that right there? You write about you and your mom singing Celine Dion together at home as you grew up. And there were some questions about whether you were gay or not. Well, so this is for you.
There's your answer.
More with Chasten when we come back. Please welcome Pete Buttigieg. That was then presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg during our town hall event at USC back in February, when we could do events with actual people. At the time, I asked Pete's husband to join us on stage and speak, but Chasten chose to remain backstage and let his husband do all the talking that day. That's a picture from that day. Well, now Chasten has plenty to say in his new book, I Have Something to Tell You. We're back now with Chasten Buttigieg. Chasten, that moment sort of gave us a glimpse of what it must be like to be a political spouse. What do you see as the role of a political spouse?
Well, first, it's important to set the record straight. I didn't want to come out on stage because you brought no-bake cookies in, and I was demolishing those backstage. But to be a political spouse, like I mentioned even in the introduction to the book, you are expected to be everything and nothing. You have to be on your game all the time, well-read on the campaign's policies, know exactly what Pete has said and what he hasn't said, questions that he's answered and hasn't answered. But you're also expected to be nothing. Don't hog the spotlight. Don't get in the way. Don't cause any news. Don't mess up. And so it's a very confusing tightrope to walk.
All right. We like to play a game around here called Personal Issues to get to know our guests a little better. So these are rapid fire questions, 30 seconds. Okay. So let's try to go as quickly as possible. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Begin. Favorite actor?
Tom Hanks.
Favorite play or musical?
Right now I'm on a Little Shop of Horrors kick.
Favorite Disney movie?
Up.
Who's your role model?
These are hard. Probably my mother.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Neither.
Favorite Halloween costume?
Something gory.
Star Trek or Star Wars? Neither? That's your answer? Well, because I saw it. So
I was watching Harry Potter movies. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was never... Sorry.
Well, when Pete was on Jimmy Kimmel Live, he showed a picture of himself when he was a kid, dressed as Captain Picard. And I literally have the exact same picture of when I was a child. The exact same.
He was really into it. There are a lot of photos of me dressed up like Harry Potter from when I was a kid. I just never got into either of those films. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I feel like maybe that's a good thing politically, because then I won't make anyone upset on either side.
Yeah,
right?
very, very Sweden of you. That's very good. All right. Well, I know when Pete suggested that Fish would play at a potential inauguration, you joked that he misspelled Beyonce. So we go out with some new music from Queen Bee. This is her new video. It's called Already. Here's a look at that.
Good choice.
Chasten, thank you so much. Congratulations on the book. Again, it's called I Have Something to Tell You. Chasten Buttigieg, thanks for being with us. More of The Issue Is after this. Finally this week, we meet the local family behind the videos that are often the top trending topics on all of Twitter.
Trump pretended the coronavirus wouldn't come to our shores.
Chances are you've seen these videos online.
Meidas Touch is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Meidas Touch is the creation of the LA-based Michaelson brothers. When coronavirus hit,
my name's Joe Exotic and this is Sarge.
Many of us binged Tiger King on Netflix.
First thing you'll need is an active sourdough starter.
Others learned to make sourdough. But these three, with no political experience, decided to form a political action committee after watching President Trump's initial press conferences.
At a certain point, we turned to each other and we said, is there anything we could do? And long story short, Meidas Touch is the result of that.
35-year-old Ben is a partner at attorney Mark Garagos' law firm. 30-year-old Brett is an Emmy Award-winning editor for TV and digital. 27-year-old Jordy is a marketing expert. The three brothers sent out a group text and decided to combine their skill sets to take on the president.
We basically just said, hey, let's just start making these videos.
The course that we've been on for the last 4 years is what you would like to see us follow for the next 4.
In just a few months, Meidas Touch has earned more than 400,000 Twitter followers, 150 million impressions a week on Twitter, and 9 million views per video for their top videos, many of which take on the president aggressively.
You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in.
In 2020, progressives punch back, so we're not afraid to meet you on your home turf.
They fund all of it through donations at MeidasTouch.com. They've already raised more than $1 million with an average donation of $26, allowing them to run these TV spots in swing states right now.
The only success that really exists is if Donald Trump is not elected president.
Our thanks to the Meidas brothers. We end this week with a 7-year-old song from Alexi Murdoch called Orange Sky that we have paired with images from this week of orange skies around our state. There are literally hundreds of wildfires burning, destroying property, killing people on the very same week we saw some of the hottest temperatures in recorded history in California. We've never seen anything like this before, and it's a reminder that it is past time we have a serious conversation about climate change and the impact it's already having for all of us. That's all for this week. I'm Elex Michaelson. Thanks for watching. The Issue Is.
It's a long road we've been walking on.